I'll stay in this area so that I'm within view of that little camera over there. And winning formula. Well, it gives me an opportunity to talk to you all. Thank you. And thank you all for coming. Actually, it's quite an opportune time just after the Olympics in London, where we've won a gold medal in sailing. It's the first gold medal we've won in sailing since 1988, 84. And we had first gold medal in sailing. Yeah, we've had gold medals in board sailing back in Barcelona, and I was involved in the Barcelona Olympics. So that's where I'll start with my recollections, which will build up to the winning formula. So what happened there was I was actually over in San Diego working with Team New Zealand, or in those days New Zealand Challenge. Some of the Olympic team in Barcelona, 92, were also involved in the same challenge, and they said, "Oh, we'd love you to come over and be our coach." So I said, "Okay, if you can swing it, I'll go across to Barcelona." And they did swing it for me. I managed to get over there about a month before the actual competition, the Olympics, opened. I mean, went to the opening ceremony, which was great fun, and that was the best sailing Olympics ever for New Zealand. 1 gold, okay, it was in board sailing, but there you go, that does count, Barbara Kendall. 2 silver and 3 bronze, 6 sailing medals. I mean, if you compare that with what we did in the Olympics in London, that's half the load, isn't it? Not bad at all. I must admit it was definitely the sailors who earned their medals, and it wasn't so much having a meteorologist as a coach, but its taste of the wind and the sails, but also the currents, and basically the lay of the land where the sailing is done. Looking for those signs in the sky which show you the way to go. So the winning formula is pretty complicated, hard to teach. I remember when we were setting up for the Barcelona Olympics, and a bloke who was helping me was Tom Snackenberg. He's a very bright spark. And I said, I want to do some balloon flights from inside the Olympic Village, because it was in Barcelona, it was arranged, it was just near the port, just near where they did the sailing. So it was great for the sailors. They didn't have to walk far at all from the Olympic Village where they were staying to the marina where they set off their boats from. It was only a kilometre walk. And so Tom and I went down to one of these Spanish gas factories, which specialised in helium balloons for parties. And they showed us various sizes of helium bottles. Said, no, that's too small. No, that's too small. So the biggest one they got, which was bigger than I am, a 2-metre bottle of helium. Definitely much more helium than what I needed for my little weather balloons. And we arrived at the Olympic Village security, lugging this big 2-metre container of helium. And they sort of thought, well, yes, what do you want to do with this? They just checked to make sure that we weren't on any of the terrorist lists or anything. And they let us get away with it. So after that, they tightened up on the security. So the Kiwi camp was the only camp at all that had any helium available for anybody who wanted to do anything with it. Now, Olympic sailing is different from America's Cup. In America's Cup, the syndicates are like protagonists in a campaign, like a war, and they are rivals to the nth degree. They won't share anything with anybody. But in the Olympics, the sailors are sailing, okay, under their country flag, but they're sailing under their own name for their own sake. And it's very much help the sailors do what they can to do the best they can. So if that meant you needed a shifting spanner and it wasn't available in your camp, if you're in an Olympic arena, you can go across to the next camp and say, can I borrow a shifting spanner? And they say, yeah, sure, go ahead, no problem. So we were quite willing to share things amongst the coaches. and amongst the camps at the Barcelona. So when I did my weather balloon flights, I shared the data and the running of the balloon flight itself with all of the other meteorologists. We had people from the English camp, they had their own meteorologist, the USA, of course, somebody from France, somebody from Spain, and me. And I would provide the helium and the balloon and the theodolite, and I had a program which could work out the results, and I'd fill up the balloon and let it release, but I just no good at all on the theodolite for watching it. So we worked out amongst our little team, the best person was the Frenchman. So he would get on the theodolite, follow the balloon, away it goes. And I'd write down the numbers and convert them into what the wind was doing at different heights. Write it out several times, hand it out to all the meteorologists, and then they go back to each of their camps and brief their own sailors. Now, I love this story because this is where, using that formula, we managed to deprive Australia of a gold medal. So it was the tornadoes. The last day of the racing, the tornadoes weren't doing too well. They're pretty well at the bottom of the point system. There wasn't that much wind in Barcelona, and they weren't actually being able to fly or get on a plane like a tornado should be able to do. Rex Sellers and what the other bloke's name? Huh? No, he'll come. Anyway, the last day of the racing, and we did the balloon flight in the morning, and we detected there was some breeze aloft, good 12 knots. And I decided by looking at the clouds around, it's going to come down to the ground. Probably not until noon, but it will get down to the ground. So I told our tornadoes, tighten up the sails and get ready for go plain sailing because you're going to actually be on a lift today. Beautiful. And the Australian meteorologists, now the Australians were at the top of the table. They were sitting pretty for a gold. The only thing that would deprive them from getting a gold was to come last in the last race. And he went to them. He had the same data as all the other meteorologists, but when he gave his briefing to the tornado camps, he told them, just stay as you did yesterday. Just let's lay loose. You've got a fast boat in 8 to 10 knots, and that's what the breeze will be today. So on the first leg, there was hardly any wind at all, and they just managed to crawl around the top mark. But then that 12-knot wind kicked in, and a 12-knot wind brings you white caps. And Rex Sellers' boat went tung, 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 win first. And the Australians were beaten by every other boat in that race, so they didn't get a gold, they got a silver. I thought that was great. This is meteorology at work. It's interesting about that helium balloon because at the end of the Olympics, when we all had our medal ceremony and we're into party mode, helium's good for parties. So that's right. First of all, we'd all have ample loads of the stuff and start speaking like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. And all the other countries joined in, so we soon had other people. The Germans were pretty strong and loved playing with the helium. Then they sort of worked out that the tank was still half full. So they deliberately applied it to one of those marking buoys, those big triangular marking buoys that were used as for rounding of the marks. And they put half a tank of helium into this buoy. And it wasn't enough to lift the buoy, but it's certainly, helium's very light. So we ended up with a buoy which you could kick like a football. Ding! Swish! For about 50 metres. This huge, 20-kilogram buoy floating through the ocean, through the air. We had great fun playing soccer with this helium-filled marking buoy. So that's one of my memories of the Olympics.